maybe just a little bit of an aspiration at certain times, and then we're going to show some real practical implementations of what people are calling smart cities. And, there's a lot of different words and verbiage I think that could be used to associate with that. Most importantly, because of the way that certain firms that were not necessarily in the building industry, like the Ciscos and the IBMs and Atos and other groups like that, but now we have, the incumbents also fighting for this space in certain ways, the Siemens, the Schneider Electrics, and whatnot. But what gets interesting about when you do see that world of smart cities and sensors and all of these very important things, I like to start thinking that we are in a movement because we're really in the midst of big data, which definitely dovetails into what David was talking about as well. The work that we've been doing at the DigiGroup really comes from a very long time of looking at a critical thinking look at what really is the built environment. And we're looking at it as an ecosystem. And that ecosystem has a life to it that has an extensibility of the life of data. I love this book by John Seely Brown that used to be the director over here at Xerox PARC, Palo Alto Research Center, where we got the mouse from and Apple got all of their designs from, almost all of them. And he had this really cool book called The Social Life of Information that said inherently data wants to be free. And when we have that entire world of thinking, you look back at what's happened with the world of security of data, which is a really important point when you want to think about what the world of smart cities is all about. So I'm sitting down last week with the IT directors of St. Louis and Kansas City, and their big worry still is people trying to get into their data. And I asked them, I just said one word, and I said, well, actually I said two, I said WikiLeaks and Snowden. It's no longer about people getting into your data, it's that data wanting to get free getting out. Because that's actually the more frightening thing. So we decided as a company that we had some good success in the past. Our tech team was involved and did the intrinsic engine, which is you use as Google Earth, that was rolled up into a thing called Keyhole. And we were dealing with images back then, and it was a really interesting time because we were looking at information through tiling, and it was a kludge. It really was not a good representation of really what's there. Now they're just building more stuff on top of it, such as Street View and all sorts of cool things. And you can Google your house, and it's okay. And most people, because it's free, especially architects, use it as like the basis of design for things like site plans and stuff like that. It's just amazing things that people do with technology. Well, we decided to actually take it from an authenticated data standpoint and actually start using tools that are nascent in the world of business, but the gaming environment. So what you're going to see today is an exploration of one firm, of what we've stumbled upon. Because if anyone says that they saw this a long time ago, they're full of crap. Everyone's really discovering this and really pioneering stuff. And it's built upon a lot of really good work that has been done by our friends at Siemens and elsewhere. So we're going to show a couple of these different products of what's happened. And we're going to actually show it in the midst of innovation. We really are talking almost pre-early adopter in certain cases. But the fundamentals are already there. It's just a matter now of the people using it and buying it. Right? So what we're going to look at is, of course, this Internet of Things and how things smush together and all that stuff. It's based upon a lot of theory that's been done. We were privileged to be asked to write some white papers, one for the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors out of the UK for a focus on India, and most recently with McGraw-Hill Financial for the analysts of Standard & Poor's that take a look at all the different bond ratings for municipalities. They're using our tools and our white papers for taking an accounting of using smart cities or the resiliency of cities as one of those check marks. The next one's coming out next Friday, and that was actually a report that is on two specific areas of Asia, Singapore and the People's Republic of China. The reason why I wanted to show that is because a lot of this stuff really comes from the ability of early adopters to show where they're going, almost like the cow paths. But we wanted to go one step further and actually do an analogy. One of my favorite authors and mentors recently passed away, Bill Mitchell of MIT's Media Labs. He had a wonderful way of describing technologies. I think one of my favorite books, which actually spurred my book, was called City of Bits. The analogy of how the web would turn into a very good analogy of the real world. And he likened certain websites to cities, and certain websites can be good and others can have a little dark side to it. The emulation of that book was wonderful, but he really hit it on the head recently by working with Cisco on a book called The Connected Cities. And it was about that Smart Connected Communities program, and a program that Andy was involved with as well called the Smart Connected Real Estate. And this little book was really cool because it started talking about the city having its own systems, urban systems. You're going to hear that word, I think, more and more and more. The world of smart cities, I think, is being really overrun with a lot of hype and too much marketing. Although it fits really nice into hearing, smarter buildings, smarter cities, smarter planet, right? It has a nice ring to it. But really, when you're looking back down on it, we need to have a different look at it. And when you look at different urban systems, and you analogize that to cardiovascular, skeletal, respiratory, digestive, things start to make sense. Because now you're not just making a decision with a line item to say we need to fix our water. Well, that water also works with the electrical, and the electrical works with DOT, and everything works together. So the organism way of looking at this is probably the best way to describe of how we're going through this. And some of the main components measures that we've been looking at, both in Monster City, outside of Abu Dhabi, the zero carbon city that's being built over a period of 25 years, with all of these wonderful, eco-city, sustainable ways of working and living, wonderful. And they're making progress, but it's in step by step. So, the comments before about, the generational shifts, that's real. And it really then comes down to these standards being put into not just saying that everyone has to have a utopian way of looking at these different measures and everyone's got to be within these ranges. What they should be doing is taking this as a framework and then realizing what the priorities are. Like in Rio right now, it's about security and transportation, right? Because they have the FIFA World Cup next year, and then in 2016, the Summer Olympics. That's a big deal. So they have to control security, they have to control the flow of traffic in order to make those events work. And the idea with the Mayor of Rio said was that now we have a way of finally having the impetus and need to do this so that we have a better city in the future after these events stop. So, and in Kansas City, they have other needs right there. They have Google Fiber being put into place that are lighting up all the residential neighborhoods. Well, now we're taking a look at looking at that opportunity so that maybe smart city components can be put onto it. The days of having, in the beginning, this idea of an Uber system that would sit on top of a city management system, like what Chicago's trying with their emergency services, this type of thing. Those are really going to be one-offs. Those Uber systems are really tough to sell in the marketplace. But what gets interesting is if you want different systems, like let's say the fire and the police and DOT and others to talk together, wouldn't it be interesting to create products just for them, but understanding that the information that's coming in, that Christine's company does, is take the data and standardize it so that we can finally have the Tower of Babel break down and talk with each other. Now, those data layers, as you heard from David before, are, can be massive. Some of it, of course, can be absolutely tremendously chaotic. Go into a building department and in any city in the US, you have paper documents, you have CAD, may have been, maybe. It's all over the place. And then the various levels of accuracy are all over the place. But the idea here is not to start to say that we're going to have like these big programs to go in and deep dive and just make all the data available. It's almost like putting a line in the sand and saying from this point on, we're going to start using it this way. And as the city starts to morph and become something new, that we start backfilling only when necessary. And it seems to be a decent strategy, especially for here in the States, as opposed to the green cities, like the 170 cities we're going to explore during this session in China, that don't exist right now. They're being built from 1 million to 20 million people, and they don't exist. They have to have a program of understanding how that works as well. But what we're finding as a company is that this idea of connecting people, places, and things really comes down to basic communication. You can have a lot of chaotic data underneath, but you have to make it simplified and relevant to that particular stakeholder, that particular person. And the best way that we've been able to look at it, especially from a citywide basis, in 3D. So we have built lots of models of many different cities, portions of cities, in order to light things up with apps. So that model keeps on coming around. And what we've done now, we have the entire country of Singapore, all 1.1 million buildings, to an accuracy level of, right now, working with their Economic Development Board. We did a study that our accuracy of our geospatial model inside a gaming environment was off by 1 centimeter. 1 centimeter. So this stuff is very, very accurate and very cool. So what we've done, and here's our model here, is take a look at what's happening here, with the newer ways of working. Things like, REST, and the REST 3D movement, with the APIs, being able to pull information in, and then be able to connect it to other cloud-based pieces. And what we're finding is, those days of trying to create Microsoft Office, I don't know if we're ever going to see those again that way, those Uber systems. What we are seeing is the ability for us to interoperate and interchange. And we are taking a lot of that from the gaming industry, specifically here in Silicon Valley, with the work of Kronos, being able to, our chief software architect, Remy Arnault, he was one of the leaders of creating the standard of how 3D objects move between different gaming tools. It's called Collada. Why haven't we done that in this industry? Well, we finally are. So the ability now to take geometry along with data and not DXF it, God forbid, but actually do something real with it and have it populate through the cloud is real and happening right now. The way that our system works is actually through Chromium, which is what the Chrome browser is based on. And we do find that the world of Chrome to be just a very unusual way of working because it speeds up our process. I'm going to give one example here about all these words you just heard and put it into a context of business. And what you're going to see here is our model of Atlanta, Georgia. There's a project that was sponsored by the mayor to help move the Georgia Dome from where it is now to a new place up along a derelict area of Midtown Atlanta, so the Atlanta Falcons and all the other people could play. He had a tough time with trying to sell this out to the city council. Got that done, but then his biggest issue, after getting all the buy-in of all the different people up and down this main corridor, because they just weren't going to move the building, they're going to create like an entertainment district. It's called the Trail of Peace, and they're going to have many types of educational things, an outdoor museum with statues and all this other stuff. That's what you're taking a look at. So what our challenge was within 10 days was to scrape as much public information as we could to actually build a model, which we did. We found some GIS information and actually built it up through a thing called procedural modeling, which then allows us to have, well, like in Esri talk, these wonderful plots, right? And we're able to extract information very accurately and start placing objects. The cool part about this was that we needed to convince a 82-year-old Southern Baptist church to move in order for this overall $4.2 billion project to move forward. And these 162 people in this congregation had put their foot down because they were told a lot of things. So Mayor Reed's job was, there was a series of 4 weeks where every week he was going to go and build upon consensus and let's get down to it. So we built this model in a little over 10 days. We put data in behind it to show what this thing is going to do in the future, especially when you're walking around with your smartphone and you can go up to Martin Luther King Jr. statue and instead of just reading something and saying, oh, that's cute, actually interact with it so you can actually hear the I Have a Dream video off YouTube. Very, very simple things. Again, things are out there, so let's start, taking a crowdsourcing a data approach and make it relevant to that person at that moment in time. So the promise of this was actually then to show it. Now, we easily could have done an animation, but what we did was we actually built the model, used our gaming engine, we put a smartboard up there, and what we were able to do was convince that congregation that night to take a vote, and they voted to move forward. Mayor Reed said that he's never had a more powerful communication tool because he was able to go up to the smartboard and move through it based on questions and interact with the audience and understand where that church was going to go, what things would look like in the future, and get their buy-in. We're seeing that visualization of data in an accurate way as being one of those first levels of citizen engagement that people like Mayor Reed have never had before. He had a lot of animations. He used to have artist renderings of what things were going to happen, spreadsheets and environmental reports and all this stuff. That stuff's important, but that's in the back end now. Plus, you're now communicating to a younger generation. That's pretty hip, that the mayor sees in gaming. He's a gamer. All of a sudden, things start to change. So with that, like I said, we have lots of models. This is a cute one that we have, which is based on level of detail. These level of detail, this is Hong Kong. We can fool around with it in the gaming world. Because of Collada, we can actually have different versions of what those levels of detail mean. You can have massing models, just white boxes, all the way through photorealistic renderings that you wouldn't know if it was real or Memorex. And we've been having fun with it. because we're learning. Modeling New York City was awesome. It's my hometown. But what was really cool was going down underneath and actually seeing where all those pipes are and the subways and everything else. And it's easy now. This is no longer, sitting down and doing individual Revit models and sticking it into some sort of platform and actually killing your network. The cloud is an amazing place. And because of the power of that, early pioneers are starting to discover what else can we do. At the same time, we have this macro need in emerging markets that are going to be really important to this country, not because of economics, but imagine this, every time here at the hackathon that we're hitting an edge key, we're creating digital DNA, right? When you go back to your offices, you're also creating digital DNA for maybe specific projects. But ultimately, we're going to be affected by these big urban issues, because when the human race starts to now live together closer, you get what we had last night with traffic. That was an issue, right? We're starting to be affected by things that we're creating. And guess who the culprits are? Us. We're building the built environment. So when we take a look at India and these massive capital needs, not just to build out their cities because they want to, it's because they have to. They have to accommodate that the agricultural food supply chain of the world is being mechanized at a rate that it's taking the jobs away from the traditional farmers. Now the good news is we're able to feed our people. The bad news is what do you do with these people that used to be the farmers and the workers and the supply chain management of that? That's a big, big, big deal, especially in a place like China, where you have 250 million people in the next 5 years, the entire population of the United States and more, moving from the west coast of China, the western provinces of China into the east coast cities. Now, John Tyson over here, a friend of mine, we lived together in, we lived in Shanghai together at the same time, up until recently when I moved back. They have an official accounting of 12 million people in that city. It's nowhere close to that. It's more than doubled. 25 million, 26 million people. Because the way that they count it is almost like in the ancient biblical times, where you were born, you are a citizen of that city. Meanwhile, there's workers, there's foreigners, you and I, that was weird, but we were living in that city. And that is only going to get bigger. Right now, McKinsey & Company said that in the next 5 years, Shanghai will balloon to over 50 million people. They can't handle that. So what do you do? We started taking a look at that problem about 5 years ago, right when I was living there. And there was a wonderful gentleman, Dr. Lee out of Harvard, that was coming back and forth, and we met, it's my alma mater, and we met up for coffees and whatnot. And he was the guy that was in with McKinsey & Company. And what they found was that the 11th five-year plan of the central government said, we want to start to accommodate these people, moving to East Coast cities by creating concentric circles and then putting micro-cities in and around those big cities. Very similar to what we do in the United States, Australia, and the UK. So it would help absorb those people. Now, I don't know if you've been watching 60 Minutes over the past year or so, these reports of China's ghost cities, that's what happened. Because just because you build it, they came and they left. They walked right through it like a ghost city and to where the jobs were, because they didn't have all the mechanisms of social stuff in place. One hospital for a certain area, they didn't figure it out right. And they also had a bigger problem, is their environment. If you've heard anything about Beijing, too many cars creates a very unhealthy situation with air, and it's getting worse. So the way that they're trying to curtail this is to say, we don't want any more Chinese buying any more cars. Yet they make so much money right now in cash, they keep on buying up more cars. And do you know what the #1 luxury brand, car in China is not what like the BMW is or Mercedes. Does anyone know it? Ford. The only reason, no, I'm so sorry. I just went blank. Not Ford, it's the GM. Buick. Sorry, Buick. And the reason why was because it was the last emperor, right? He had a Buick. And when Mao came and took over, Li Ka-shek, who's Shanghaiese, drove it from Beijing back down into Shanghai. And it was like, wow, because he drives it, that's got to be what the Grand Poobah has, right? Still to this day, it's the only reason why GM's actually in business. You see Buicks and people are just like, oh, what about a Buick? Really? No accounting for taste, I guess, but amazing thing, right? So imagine now even more cars coming online and people want more cars. That's really going to be a problem there. So all these macroeconomic things are happening And boom, they had great leadership has just entered in, and they have the now 12th five-year plan. And they're not going to the concentric circles of suburbs and micro-cities. What they're going to do is take their existing cities and go north. They're building up and up and up. Density, dense urban environments. They're going to try and pack as many people into a city like United Airlines does on a plane, and worse. But that actually creates opportunity, right? So right now in the world, we have 65 mass transit systems that are really fully functional, 65. They are building 170 mass transportation systems that don't exist right now by 2025. The reason why is all about energy. They're actually creating these energy districts, and within these districts, these hubs are going to be built above every subway station. The subway station then becomes that nucleus of what we know as a neighborhood to go as high as they can. So it's just like what you see in Hong Kong and in Singapore today, where you enter the station, you come out into a retail environment, usually a mall. Then above that, they have the commercial space, and then above that, high-rise residential. And they're going to do that on steroids. To be fully self-supportive. So they're going to create their own energy as a microgrid. They're going to use smart technologies in order to create a better experience, flow of people, flow of merchandise, flow of finance. They're also now going to start to think about this density issue as a way of creating new types of value, meaning that the real estate value now starts to shift about what that means. Is it, you're close to the energy hub, that's higher. It's going to be an amazing experience to watch this go through. They right now have 15 cities that are under construction right now, usually within the existing cities of Suzhou, Chongqing, Chengdu, Shanghai. This is the Shanghai model, about how they're going to do this. It's backed by the power grid called State Grid, and this is happening right now. So now, in the world of smart cities and smart buildings, what happens when the building is actually the city? Very, very interesting stuff. It's almost like science fiction, and it's being thrust into an environment where they have to build this. So in Suzhou, I took these pictures back in September. They wanted to create the world's most energy efficient district with this energy system. So they took this area, along with the Singapore government, to create this gateway. And these are my pictures. It really is being built. This is called the Big Pants Building. For real. They actually, the Chinese have such a keen sense of humor. It's almost understated with this stuff. In Shanghai, they have this beautiful tower done by Comparison Fox School, the World Financial Center. And it used to have a circle in the middle. And they had to rechange it because it reminded too many Chinese of the Japanese flag. And they did nasty things in World War II. So they had to change the design, but now it looks like a bottle opener. So it's the bottle opener building, and that's it. But they never translate it. We do is, but in Chinese it sounds even funnier. It's just really cool how they do stuff. Anyway, at the end of the day, the Suzhou Center CBD is one of these energy efficient locations in the district. And what they're going to do is now collect data, understand how that's built so that they can roll it out to these other 170 cities or 168 cities, whatever it's going to be after they get that done, and they will get it done by 2025. So an amazing way of looking how smart city frameworks now need to be reprioritized based upon economic and social needs. This is the fun part about what the flexibility of what this, this branding term of smart cities is going to be. We actually take a look at it more on a micro level because of the amount of data that we need to collect in order to build those visualization models. We actually do consider all smart buildings to be the digital DNA and the foundation of how a lot of this information should have. So they're almost like building blocks. And there's so much information about the built environment that's just laying dormant, most of it in digital format. Christine talked about what Melanie Nutter was doing as the director of the Department of the Environment, collecting that data from the CBD of San Francisco based upon an ordinance that said that you had to collect 5 data points. That's law, and it gets pushed along with your quarterly taxes. And I'm going to show a slide, and I'll give you the website about it. You can go up there right now and check it out. And it is true that those LEED Platinum buildings up and down Market Street, before they did this, looked really good. And then they took the data in there, and boy, it went really, really bad. There was not one LEED Platinum building that passed at all, failed. They didn't know why. And then they used a 3D tool. I'm going to show you a little bit later, and we'll come back to how come those things failed, and really what had They did some studies on a couple of buildings about, what was the information put in wrong, was the equipment not designed properly, did the GC value engineer it out, and all those came back negative. So just hold on to that thought. So this is where this business intelligence way of looking at information starts to build out what the smart city approach is. You have your equipment, the controls, the management, and then the analytics on top of that. At the end of the day, there's a lot of reporting that's being doubled up, but now you can start seeing it in 3D, and now you can start making some interesting decisions. Some of those decisions are also going to come from other data sources. One that we're working on, that we have a patent on right now, is called the Building Black Box. This is a product that is actually based upon the measurement of the sway of a building, the movement of a building. And what this does is that it actually creates the health of that building. And there is an interesting thing about this is that we have an accelerometer that sits in the core of the building, both at the top and bottom of, like I say, an elevator shaft. Laser that goes down, and then we have the magnets that understand the micro movements of that building. And what that does is, over the time, we get the average of the behavior of that building, because every building's different, and they have different things, like, subways running underneath to vibrate, just all sorts of things, including live human movement, like live loads, right? So once we get that, we can understand, the analogy is how your knee moves normally, so that there's an event, like an earthquake, where you tear your ACL, your building's going to flop around. 92% of all deaths in an earthquake happen not on the event, but in the aftershocks. Because your cross bracing snaps, people go in to save people, get a little shaking, pancake. Happens all the time all over the world. So what this does is that this starts to identify in a very quick way that it wirelessly goes out into this 3D model, and it gets pushed out to the first responders, the building owners of that affected area and whatnot, green, yellow, red, in a nanosecond if your building has failed, because of the algorithms involved with the measurement. So this is about saving lives. That's a smart city. But the really cool part, which is where, we're just in the discovery phase, which is why, this hackathon is a great thing, because now we want to understand what's going on out there that can help us figure out what else needs to now go into our new spinal cord. Think about what this black box is now. It's the spinal cord of the building that's now communicating to other buildings in the internet of buildings. What else needs to be measured? What else needs to be talked about? And that's where we're at as a company. We're going, this is pretty cool. So these are the types of things we do use, a lot of data. This morning I saw some great slides about the amount of data that you capture. We're looking at 7 petabytes per building per year. That's a lot of frickin' measurements and understanding there. So one other thing I want to show you here was this idea of technology is really cool when we can manage it in your comfort zone, wherever it is. It can be in Starbucks, it can be here, it can be in your office. But when we start to take a look at mobility and other types of tools like drones and all sorts of really funky stuff, that's where I get excited. Because now we're talking about guys in the field. Like I mentioned, I'm an architect, a real one, but I was also a contractor. I never designed anything I couldn't build. The last big building I worked on was 6 years ago for the School Construction Authority of New York City. We did a $365 million high school. And I was the senior project manager. I was the GC. And I learned a lot on that. Number one, that I found that, on any given day I had, anywhere between 500 and 1,800 men, women, sometimes children, which was always an interesting thing, on site. And my big thing was their security, number one. Always having safe jobs. The second thing was get the building built. Third thing I discovered was the highest level of technology at that time, only 6 years ago, that everyone used was push-to-talk, which I hated because it destroyed my schedule. Why? Because you have your schedule, and then you got your 2-week look ahead, and then you got the real schedule, which was your daily report, and you had to manage those people, yet they were making decisions without considering the effects on other people, all because of push-to-talk. So push-to-talk sounds like great, we can communicate faster. It's like, that's not a good thing. You're screwing things up. That was one. The second level was fax machines, still used, and email attachments, and that was it. We did our Primavera thing, and it stood up there, and that was great, but that's like a big guideline. Like I said, the 2-week look-aheads were the things that went out and whatnot. But the number one thing I always thought was, what about the mobility factor of actually getting the information out to the field? Which is why I love the fact of seeing Google Glass, drones, this type of thing out in the field. So, our company took a look at this. Well, what does that do with smart cities? How do you scale that up? And who in the field really needs information? First responders. So what we did was we worked with the city of Kansas City, Missouri. We actually closed the deal last Tuesday, very proud, to provide this 3D management tool based on gaming technologies that does 4 things. Number one, it's meant for resource control. It's also meant for events, so that when the firefighters actually go into that particular event, they have information. Where does that information come from? The government. Authenticated data, real data that the built environment has created. So now we're really starting to take a look at this ecosystem of you have designers, architects, engineers, contractors, subs, you have facility managers, people that manage buildings, smart buildings, that all of a sudden have to put the information maybe for permitting, maybe for a lot of different reasons, zoning and all this stuff that resides inside of the city. We're taking it out and using it for the fire department. The way that it works is actually pretty clever. Simple in certain cases. We still use Google Earth, just because, well, we can. And the idea here is to start to, you go down a level and now you're into Kansas City. And what we've done is that we took GIS information that they already had, built out their entire neighborhoods, and actually then took a stab at taking the mapping that Google was using for Google Fiber, because they're already building it out. And what we've done is allowed the ability for a dispatcher, when there's a 911 call to come in, to say, all right, what's the deal here? Now, usually what they do is they say, within a certain area, that if there's a fire, we know that we go to the closest firehouse. But in this case, no, because the data now that's coming through our big data set that we're able to access through the city says that that's a hazmat situation because there's a permit taken out on it. So you may not be putting the right resource out there, and every time you send out a wrong resource, like a false alarm, it's $15,000. So that's big money. So what we've been able to do is condense that. We're able to allow that particular unit that has the right fire apparatus and skills to go out to this hazmat situation. All of a sudden, the BIM data and all this information is downloading as they go to the site. And on their iPads, they're going to standardize iPads. What they do is that they get the play of what they're going to do. It's like playing fantasy football. So you're up there and you go, okay, this type of fire. These are the people that are on the truck. Let's give them their game plan. These 2 guys are fighting the fire. The other guy's going after search and rescue. 82% of all deaths and injuries happen to firefighters during search and rescue because they don't know where the family cat is and they don't know where the kid is and this type of thing. What our system does is that it takes a lot of that big data and shows the relevancy of everything from, is the fire hydrant fully loaded? Do we have enough Wi-Fi on the bus, the fire engine? And right now with Google Fiber, we're actually now asking them to light up the street lamps with Wi-Fi. So we've now double coverage, a lot of like a wireless mesh into space. And what we can do now is track it also in the gaming format back at the firehouse and also up to fire headquarters if necessary. In real time, this is all being recorded. And this is sort of like a gamey way of looking at where my guys are. The number one thing that we were told by the fire incident managers, the deputy fire chief and the fire chief was, their main concern is when the firefighters go in, do they come out? And it's a simple head count. So when you have this entire wireless mesh thing around this house, because the Google Fiber thing's in place and we're able to have the engine be a redundancy, we've created a geofence around that property. So when you actually do then have that diode that's sewn into the firefighter's jacket, it's like a geofence. It goes boop, boop, and he's in, and it automatically populates all the different charts that people use in the heat of the fire, and then they also know when they come out. In the meantime, we can now track them inside the home. Why? Because we have information from the building department that shows at least the basics of where everything is. The problem is that you see now in the second piece of what this thing's really important for is inside a smoke-filled condition. That we're able now to take an app, which now we have Google Glass, finally, and we're building that out as a next generation of being able to have, in one instance, the wireframe model so that at least now, geospatially, you know where you're going and you know where the stairs are, you know where the doors, you know where the egress is. This is what we've developed so far. The second piece is LiDAR. Being able to take that LiDAR and now mesh it together so that you now know where the child is, you know where that coffee table is, you know where the sofa is so that you can get the hell out because in a smoke-filled condition, you can't see it. So this is a way now of taking a new appreciation for the existing data that you guys create every day in the AEC industry. It's now laying dormant somewhere inside the city, And our job is to extract that and make it actionable in a real way that saves lives. So we've been successful so far with getting this to a point where the prototype is now in place. It's now the productization piece. The other piece about this, which is pretty cool, which I'll stop this video and start to take a look at, is this, because this is where we want to go. Working with BASF to prototype these visors that would allow that firefighter to move forward, capture information, and actually make sure that they either save lives or save their own life. So this is the type of thing that we look at smart cities. It's the ability to go in and really start to handle the citizen engagement, the idea of having the first responders help themselves. So much so that we do have an app right now, if you want to go up online and download it at the iTunes store. It's called Zap City. This was the first iteration, something free that we wanted to give away for finding missing persons. This is specifically for Kansas City right now. I'd say the app is handed out to all first responders, both off-duty and non-duty, and it's a push type of app. What's cool about this is that we use mapping to geolocate the potential of where a person's going to go. This is really useful for people that have autistic children or people with Alzheimer's. Not the people with Alzheimer's, the people that have to care for people with Alzheimer's. Because there's a repetitive nature of history, specifically with autistic children, about where they go. One of the big areas, of course, is water. They're attracted to that. You know, it could be a pool, it could be a creek, it could be an ocean, something like that. So what usually happens, what the Kansas City Police Department told us was that when there's a missing person, where do the police go? To the home. Meanwhile, they're not at home. That's why I called you. You know, so the idea now is to push out the information, almost like a smart Amber Alert, to show where they've gone in the past so that your resources now are not spent just going all over the place. You have a plan. And at least they have a starting point. Rather than going to the home as a starting point, they can get a lot of data and information that way. So, you know, again, we had to build this thing from the mapping and geospatial GIS world first, get big data in place, and that's what we're calling a smart city. It also gets very interesting, and I'll wind up here in a couple of minutes, when we start to take a look at maybe larger organizations that are also taking a look at the workings and frameworks of smart cities for their own internal purposes, like their portfolios or their campus. And we were asked to come into Google just as friends to say hello because they heard some cool things that we're up to in gaming. And their big problem is that they're collecting BIM data by the bundleful. They're taking that Sun Microsystem campus and repositioning it and all that stuff. It's on hold right now for a number of different reasons. But as an owner, they asked for BIM. And where did they get it? They got the architect's version of BIM. They got the subcontractors, all the subcontractors' version of BIM. They had the GC Navisworks version of BIM. They had so much BIM that they don't know what to do with it. And they said, we've spent a lot of money. Now they're hiring people to figure it out. And one of the interesting things was, in addition to that, is they wanted to know what to do with it for a facilities and operations standpoint. And I was just like, wow, you know, I mean, Andy's lived and breathes this stuff forever. You know, a bunch of my friends are doing this forever. I said, well, sure, we'll take a stab at this. So we took 2 weeks. And what we did was we took Google Earth and our engine, and we married it together with every Google product possible. So all the processes and everything else for maintenance and operations really come from Google Maps, Google Calendar, YouTube, Gmail, all that stuff. And what we were told by Google was that was probably one of the most clever ways. Oops, that's not good. There's two people you never want to hear say oops. It's your dentist and your IT guy. Are you operating? Is it a slow connection? Let me just see what's happening here, guys. Because this is sort of interesting. And why are you spacing out on me? Okay. So what we were able to do was wrap all these different pieces of Google process tools in place, and what we did was we resold it back to them. And they said, well, how can we say no? It's our own tools. It's like a dog eating his own dog food, right? So it worked out pretty cool. But the reason why I'm bringing it up, and if it ever releases over here, and this isn't even Windows 8. Well, we'll wait here a little bit for it, and I'll tell the story. What we were able to do is actually take the gaming world and take all of the different, facility management consultants they have, and operational people, and they use a variety of tools that said that they could work with the BIM data and have BIM for FN. And it's all a kludge, and it all sucks. So anyone that says that they're doing it right, they're not. It's just a terrible thing. It's just perpetuating, again, a bad process, and they're going to blame the technology or they're going to blame everything but themselves. So what we decided to do is to say, enough. Everyone up there, everyone sitting out there is going, I'm really happy I'm not him right now. You see, let's see if I can get some of this out of here. Let me do this one. I think this is the one that's causing some heartache. Okay. And I think we're good. Are there any IT guys out there?
Looks like your IT was turning it up.
Hang on a second. Let me see if I can get this. What I'm thinking is happening is that I'm just in a loop right now, and it's just not allowing it to release.
Say iTunes is not responding.
Yeah. Is that what that is? Okay. So try it again. Apple products really never, ever work with PC to do that perfectly. It did. Thank you, man. It did it. Oh, where did that do it? Okay, so let me pop this back up again, and I'll go right into here. What we will do, Google will say, all right, so we are not an expert system, but you're using many expert systems. You have lots of data. What are the needs that you have in a relevant way? And what we were able to do is actually get into a world where they were able to identify things like the way that they work is in flex space, and they needed to have tools that would take a meeting room and reserve it. So reservation systems were very important to them. Being able to have augmented reality, where you would actually take an Android tablet or an iPad. They actually don't care too much about that, and be able to go and geospatially check yourself in, and then all of a sudden see where that air handling unit is, and be able not to have that 8.5 by 11 binder of diagnostic information and whatnot, and then be able to do something with it in real time, because that data is coming through. So I wanted to show that to you, but it's being really, really cranky, so I apologize for that. And I'm almost at the end over here, so let me just pop this up, start the PowerPoint again, and I can show you the cool stuff on my iPhone later. Because the last thing I want to show you here, once this thing opens up, is here we go. Is where the virtual worlds and gamification really is coming into play. And the reason I want to end with this is because there's so many opportunities, I think, that go beyond just the AEC processes that most AEC professionals don't grasp. That it's not about doing the design and construction. It is about that next level of services and what that really does mean. And that can actually be done through different types of tools. In one case, we were working with Target, being able to take all their different geospatially located objects like products and see them on the shelves in a virtual way in every store. Now, why is that important? Well, a couple of different things. They needed to prove out to Procter & Gamble and Kellogg's and everything else that the product placement of those things really did happen. The way that we managed that was actually to put a wireless mesh inside of every big box. And then what happened was they were able to show through their inventory system where that particular Kellogg's Cornflakes box was. So we knew that it was at this latitude, longitude, and it was at this z-axis. Then what we did was we had these individual objects, these individual products that were one-offs in a library. And then what we did is we auto-populated based on the inventory of that store. That was one thing that was free. The second thing that did is help with shrinkage. Because literally you could actually then see where the merchandise was going, and most of that shrinkage wound up in the employee locker room. So they were able to take a lot of these things and make little wins that we thought was really interesting. This is the thing that I want to remind you about what Christine's talking about. This is Market Street, part of it, Market Street. What you see on the left is what exists today up on the web. You can go up there, just search for it. It actually has all these different, green, yellow, red indicators, how they're doing with their leads, their performance of lead. But what was really cool was that when we went in, we actually took our 3D tool and said, well, now we can actually have one idea about why these things are failing. Most of the buildings that failed were on the south side of Market Street. On the north side of Market Street were new buildings that had reflective glass. The heat gain from the reflection of the sun all day long was never incorporated into the load factor of the buildings being affected. You'd never know that with a 2D map. So these are the things that we're starting to learn that, hey, wow, okay, well now we've sharpened the sword a little bit more. What I'd like to do is also to just close up by saying, it really is a challenge for us because, my kid is going to be growing into this world. And I would hate it that, the amount of time that I do spend away from him for business was done in a way that did not have a goal. And one of those goals is to actually create a very good environment. The cities of today are wonderful from the standpoint of what they've been able to morph into. Now, of course, every city has issues, and politics and society, U.S. infrastructure, there's all this stuff. But the fact that you have a communal spirit around a particular city and the different neighborhoods gives it its own personality. And what I love is trying to idealize what that could be in the future. And what are the stepping stones that we're going to be providing that next generation coming up? I'm not sure if I'll ever live to see this type of thing, but I do know that the plans for Singapore, and for places like Paris, and like places like New York, that's Governor's Island, isn't that wild? Or Shanghai. These are just ideas. But in the world of gaming, in the world of big data, we can start to ideate in a way that was either very too expensive, it was too long, or it was just ridiculous. Some of the things that we're exploring are working with things like Minecraft, understanding what Second Life is all about, understanding what happens when we can start to leapfrog the tools of today so that when I do things, it makes a little more sense. So with that, thank you very much.